Welcome to video 26 in our van build series. Today we're going to tackle our interior trim. You know, all the tricky bits. How do I cover that angle? What do I do in this space? What should we do here? You get the idea. I don't have all the answers, but I will share with you the challenges that we faced and how we tackled them, most with our plan A and sometimes with our plan B. We're going to show you how we addressed that tricky area directly above the sliding door, how we covered our B pillars, and what we did with our back doors, where we added wall cubbies and whether we used aluminum or wood. Finally, I'm going to share with you which interior automotive adhesive we chose and why. Enough talk, let's get started. The 90 appears to have seeped through. Not too crazy about that. A couple spots there, down here as well. Wow, that looks pretty good. I picked this up for about 10 bucks about a year ago. I'm now seeing it for about $45 a can on Amazon, which is ridiculous. This I got at Princess Auto. I think it was either $8.95 or $9.95. It was under 10 bucks. I haven't heard anybody talk about this. So I did two panels today. Let's see, this one here was done with 77. And this one was done with the 90, which everybody recommends. Now, these have an adjustable nozzle. The 77 doesn't. It sort of sprays on like a mist. This sort of goes in a kind of like a wand from a car wash. It's a thin one way and wide the other. I've had very little luck with getting these to work properly, and for that reason I end up using more glue than I'd like to, and it soaks through. So here it went through a little bit too much here and a little bit right up there. And I've had issues with this before where it actually, when we were doing curtains some time back, it went right through the fabric. So that's a word of caution if you're using the 90. I guess my takeaway though for you would be both work exceptionally well. And I mean really stick. Both will work. If I had my choice, I won't be using any more of this. I own 3 more cans of this, so I'll keep using it. But this is fantastic, and if you can get it at Princess Auto or probably in the States, Harbor Freight, you know, for under 10 bucks, this is a bargain. And it was easy to work with. It it locks up or tacks up in about 30 seconds, something like that, where this is about 1.5 minutes, and it totally grabs. I don't know if you can see that. So super good. Recommend this. I'm going to be slicing this one here, so we'll give it a go. What you're looking at here are the 2 vented vertical plastic covers at the rear of the van to the left and the right of the rear doors. I'm just covering these pieces with fabric and then using some bubble wrap plastic to jam in the vent openings while the glue sets up. It worked great. Well, I'm at the back of the van above the 2 doors, and this was essentially a day of bending break. Lots of fiddly little stuff here, working around corners, multiple bends, relief cuts, and so forth. And I did it in 3 sections, actually 2 different thicknesses of metal. This is just some scrap metal. This is road sign. This is just scrap metal. And again, the goal here is just filling in all those little pocket holes. Of course, on this side, a little bit different than the other because the wood is here is comes back a little bit further. So I had another little gap to fill in. So again, lots of little relief cuts and bends, and I've got to finish riveting this piece to that, but when this is finished, it'll just be a nice little piece of fabric all the way across. Enough for today.
So now I just need to cover these 3 pieces with fabric and then install them. I'm not showing the entire fabric covering process here, just one of the tricky parts. I can't say enough positive things about the 3M77 spray adhesive and the Duramax dark gray fabric. The part that I'm working on here has a number of different folds and angles. 30 to 40 seconds after applying the spray adhesive, you can start working with the fabric. It really works well, holding it tight to the different contours and angles and edges. So even the tricky parts aren't hard. The adhesive lets you briefly remove and reposition the fabric as needed to ensure you have a smooth edge. Generally, about 30 minutes after doing this work, I come back with a utility knife and I cut away all of the folds of fabric on the back side of the piece to ensure the part will lay flat against the van walls.
That's perfect. Yeah. Wow, does that look good?
For the cover plates at the top of the rear door, I wanted to build in 2 pocket shelves to hold loose items like glasses, cell phones, books, etc. Those things that you have with you at night. Using thin plywood, I first measured and cut a cover plate. The back door already has mounting holes for interior trim. I'm reusing these holes by tracing their location from the backside using a super short pencil.
Oh, well, that's not too bad.
Here's my first fitting of the cover plate. In this picture, you can see them both installed, and I am testing to ensure the opening is suitable for holding a full-size tablet. With the cover plates made, I now need to build the inside shelf portion. Here I once again used scrap pieces of wood kicking around the garage. Having loosely assembled a mock-up to test for fit, I later disassembled and then installed the interior fabric to the wood prior to assembly. It looks pretty good. It becomes clear why I designed the unit the way I did. The back needs to be tall enough to cover the entire area that's visible, but short enough to slip inside the door during assembly. 3 rivets are all that was needed to securely attach the inside shelf to the door. I think this looks awesome.
This pillar has to remain accessible. And it looks like there is one bend sort of right here and then another bend right there. I also wanted to utilize the existing plugs.
This was a very easy piece to make. Literally, I just cut some scrap metal to size as needed. I added one bend and then covered it with fabric. Most of my time was actually spent capturing the hole locations to reuse the standard interior plugs on the Ram ProMaster.
So there you go. I think that looks fantastic. I'll do something similar up here next.
Here's a quick review of the end result. Now I'll show you how I made it.
Well, I found another aluminum sign. Time to turn it into something. Okay, I'm just above the sliding door here, and I'm going to start to address this area. And essentially my game plan here is to essentially hide anything with holes or plug the holes. So looking underneath, I've got a number of different layers of metal. And I've got a lower area right here between this weld and this weld. So I've got 3 holes here to cover. So I'm going to first take a piece of the road sign and bend just around this to cover these 3 holes. So I'm going to go bend a piece right now. As you can see, it's unfinished. I'm just slowly starting to follow the shape. These here will be plugs, similar to this here. And this is just electrical tape. I just got it against the edge of the metal to protect the wood while I'm fitting. But this will be covered with the fabric. And it'll come all the way down here. And you can see here I'm working on just doing a little bit of shaping to follow. And it's following the curvature. It's great. I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to cut it off right here or if I'm going to put a bend there and have it continue. But either way, I have to build in this area up here. As it folded out, it pulled away from the ceiling. So I'll be adding another piece of aluminum in behind it with countersunk rivets. And when you're finished, you won't see it at all because it'll just be covered with the fabric. Come on.
This is a dimpled die set designed to countersink rivets. It's commonly used in aircraft manufacturing. This tool is available from Aircraft Spruce, among other stores.
That is perfect. That is completely flush. And I've added another piece right in here. You saw me build that just a minute ago. Cut it down to size. I rounded just the edge ever so slightly, trimmed off the bottom, rounded the corners, put a little bit of light coat paint on this, fabric on that, and that'll end it off right there. It'll be nice and clean. So that'll cover off this whole area. I now need to get back and start working on this area. That'll be the next thing I tackle. And then I can start putting fabric on it.
Back to the bending brake for one more bend.
Okay, this part is made. I went to the bending brake and did a nice little job just following this line here. And it just took some time here trimming this down just a little bit at a time so I didn't take too much off of it. Wow. Well, does that ever finish that? Okay, the next area that I need to tackle is right up here. And in previous videos, you've seen I put an awful lot of effort into maintaining the width of the van in order so a mattress can fit in, and that meant no framing. Well, that's causing me a little bit of grief now, but I was expecting that. So I'm just going to share with you what I'm going to try to do because I don't actually have the thoughts baked on this yet. Just as an example, this is a flat area here and I've got a flat area here, but they are not level. So whatever I do will likely have one of these plugs right into here and go right along this edge here. And then likely I'm going to have a kick up of some kind. Probably going to do this out of 3/16 plywood because I have actually run out of metal. All right, so I've got it all the way across this way. That's fine, but I actually have to deal with this as well. And generally I've been trying to plug all these holes. So I'm going to have to build another lip here where the fabric would come out, then just go straight in and cover that up as well. I've got to sort that out. And probably the most difficult is up here. I've got to do an angle of some kind, which I'll figure out in a little bit. So if it was a bending brake, it would be metal, but it's wood. So I'm going to have to come up with a jig to attach this piece of wood to this piece of wood and have a nice little piece. My idea here is have a single piece that covers this right down to this area here, covers up these holes, covers up all of this, and has a nice little piece of trim, fabric, to finish off this area here. And I'm not done. I've got two lights I've got to install here. Wiring is right there. Those are reading lights. And I've got to put a pocket in here. A small little cubby to put your glasses, cell phone, tablet, whatever, so you can find them in the morning. big job ahead of me. Plan A is 3/16 plywood with a whole bunch of different angles. Plan B, well, we'll see if I get to a plan B. Let's see if A works first. So I am going to start with these little pieces here, and once I get them sorted, I'll take an accurate measurement between here and there and start cutting in some back pieces just to glue and nail the two pieces of plywood together. And maybe I'll pick up this discussion after that's done.
Now this is interesting. I have to drill a number of holes into the frame, and behind this location is an entire network of 12-volt electrical wiring. So I made this little bent aluminum guard to slip inside the wall to hold the wiring away from the drilling location. When the drill bit pushes through the metal, it'll bump into the aluminum guard rather than cutting into the wiring. Down along this bottom edge, I will be going through over an inch of material and therefore will be using bolts. Here I'm installing rivet nuts to receive those bolts. I have applied some construction adhesive to the wood beam and will now install the thin plywood on top of it. This approach allows me to make the wall in place, ensuring we acknowledge and capture all of the inconsistencies in this fan. Nothing is straight or square. With the piece fitted, I'm now using a brad nailer to secure the sheet to the wooden beam while the glue sets up.
Well, I'm making some progress here, but I think it's a good time to stop and talk about a plan B. These are in place, great, clecoed currently. I'll end up putting in plugs like this. This chunk of 2x4 behind here is 15/16 by 15/16, so just less than an inch. And I fastened it to the wall first, and then brought this down on top of it, because if you look here, it's not even. In other words, there's nothing square on a van. So I'm building this in place. So after this sets up, I'll remove these screws, trim this down, and then run a 1/2 inch router bit along the edge to give it a nice rounded edge so the fabric will go over top of it. But the reason I'm stopping to talk right now is my original plan was to capture this angle here. Oh gosh, I don't know what that is, but 125 degrees, something like that. The point that I wanted to make here is I was hoping that this was going to be consistent all the way along, and it's not even close. Yeah, so this is about 113, something like that. There's quite a bit more down there. Point being, I was originally going to run through the opposite angle of that and build a reinforcement behind here to hold this angle, and it'd be consistent all the way along. That would be easy to do on a table saw. That's not the case now, because this is all different. This is at a steeper angle than this one here. So my plan B is now to fiberglass this joint. So I'm going to leave it right here. I'm going to fiberglass this in place.
I use just enough fiberglass to hold its position and angle. Once removed, I'll reinforce the connection on the backside out of sight. With the 3/16 plywood trimmed back to the 15/16 wooden beam, I ran the piece through the router table with a 1/2 inch radius roundover bit. I then cut another pocket hole to hold our personal items.
Okay, well this is the final dry fit. I've just loosely put in a few of the plugs, which means I've drilled these out to the final size. I've got the mounts for the future lights. And I've done most of the sanding. I've done the cutout now for I guess the pocket. I have to build something behind that, but I'll do that afterwards and then glue it to the backside. So this is ready to go. I'm gonna take it down, and if it needs a little bit of final sanding, I'll do that, but I'll take it down and cover it with fabric.
Doing a final test fit with the fabric covered piece. Notice the pocket hole doesn't have a back yet. Like before, I made the pocket hole shelf out of scrap wood, covered it with fabric, and will now glue it in place. I let the glue set up for 24 hours, and I have several pounds of weight holding the two pieces together. While the glue was setting up, I finished the necessary connections for the two reading lights. Now here's the finished piece with our reading lights installed and the pocket hole backing installed. It looks pretty good. Here it is installed, although I have not yet covered the access holes for the 3 bolts along the bottom of the unit. The RV reading lights turn on and off by touch. They use about 3 watts, and they have 3 light settings from soft and warm natural white light all the way up to bright. The entire unit is all aluminum, and the lamp head can be rotated 360 degrees horizontally and 180 degrees vertically. And it includes a convenient USB plug to charge your cell phone at night. Yes, I recommend this light, and I have provided a link in the description. So I have 3 access holes to fill. It just so happens the ugly plastic friction plugs that came with the van will fill this purpose. I just needed to cut them a little bit shorter, and then I can reuse them. They do a great job concealing the holes at the bottom. Here is the installed trim piece. With the lights off, lights on, life is good.
Working on the passenger side here, and I wanted to show a couple things here. Very similar approach to the driver's side. I've got the board mounted on the bottom here, and I've spent the last few hours fitting these pieces to fit into this area. But I wanted to show you this as well. It was really important to me to get as tight a seam as I could right along this area here. And so I've got a little piece of wood in the back here, pulling this out, ideally twisting this slightly and pushing it in tight here. Same on this one here, so it's very, very tight all the way along these areas. These will later come out, but it's just making sure that these pieces stay tight against the roof while I fiberglass them in that position. And the other thing I wanted to share is, like I shared on the other side, nothing here is straight. So you'll notice this one here is actually up like this a little bit. And so the board that's going to come up is going to come right along here. But again, I'll be fiberglassing this in place, and so it's going to hold this exact shape there. Okay. There we go. Okay, this goes about here. Here's another mistake I made right here. I accidentally cut off too much of this material. And it was a really simple fix. I just added a piece of plywood in behind it, glued it in place, then used a couple flush-mounted rivets just to hold it while it was setting up, and then filled in the piece here. So this, of course, will just be covered with fabric, and you'll never see that little mistake that I made.
Our van came with a couple door-activated lights, so the interior wasn't pitch black while entering. I wanted to reuse one of these in the cabin area. This light was originally mounted along the edge of the roofline. I rerouted the wires to install it here. Here is a close-up of the hardware I used along the bottom edge of this panel, an M8 Allen head. I used an Allen head to minimize the size of the access hole. Had I used a hex bolt, I would have had to make the hole twice as large to accommodate the socket. Here is our second wall panel and trim piece complete. Look at the details here on how the Duramax fabric follows the contours of the wall panel. Fantastic. Installation was straightforward. So I have a few minor trim pieces yet to address, but I'll do those off camera as they follow the same process I've been demonstrating here. So what's next? I'm going to install our water tank and plumbing. Hey, thanks for watching.